When coding a kidney transplant, you need to remember a few things. There are three primary procedures. Procedure number one is a nephrectomy, number two, backbench work, and number three, transplantation. We're going to review all three, but before we talk about these procedures, I want to help you understand how in medical coding, anytime you have a transplant, we refer to the organ being transplanted as a graft. So when you're coding, you're going to see organ and graft used synonymously. So just so you know, that's what that is. Now, you will also need to distinguish who is donating the graft or who is receiving the graft. The source or person, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a person, it could be a cadaver. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the source donating the graft is the donor, and the person receiving the graft is the recipient. Now, when you're coding for kidneys, the source, the donating source could be a cadaver or a living person. Now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and define the procedures, those three procedures. And we're going to begin with a nephrectomy. The first procedure carried out in a kidney transplant is a nephrectomy. This is the removal of a kidney. Where are we removing this kidney from? Well, we're removing it from the donor. Yes, nephrectomy. And if you remember, nephra means kidney, ectomy is removal. The next procedure is the kidney backbench work. What is that? After the donor kidney is removed, backbench work takes place. This is the prep work, right? They have to prepare that kidney before they implant it or transplant it. So doctors may do things like clean the kidney, trim the blood vessels or ureters, and add stents. And when we say stents, they're talking about catheters. It ensures that that kidney will fit and function properly. All right. So this is backbench work. Now that is standard backbench work. However, backbench work could be more complex and involve anastomosis. When that takes place, you'll need to code for that as well. Now, the final step in a kidney transplant is the transplant. This is where the surgeon places the kidney in the recipient's body. And if you look on the right, it looks like this patient has three kidneys. Yes. And the kidneys, the patient's kidneys, the diseased kidneys are still remaining in the body. And sometimes they do leave the kidneys in the body. Yeah, sometimes they remove them, right? So we're going to show you how to code for that as well. So this step three kind of represents the entire process. Step one, you have the nephrectomy from the donor. Step two, let's say that they did that backbench work. Then step three, they transplanted it in the kidney. Let's look at the facts to remember when coding kidney transplants or renal transplants. Code series 50300 through 50380. And as you can see, here are three facts to remember. And the first has some green bold. That means this language has been changed for 2026. So, number one, several potential procedures. Yes, you have to think about what you are coding for. Cadaver kidney removal, living donor kidney removal, backbench work for cadaver kidney, backbench work for a living donor kidney and allotransplantation and reconstruction. Number two, for additional reconstruction of the donor's kidney before transplantation, refer to codes 50327 through 50329. And number three, code only the procedures performed. That's key coders. Code only what was done. And use modifier 51 for multiple procedures and modifier 50 for bilateral. Okay, coders, I know it could be a little confusing at first, but once you become aware of those procedures, it's a wrap. Now, I got something to help you kind of visualize the procedures for a kidney transplant. Here is the kidney transplantations chart. This was created to just help you learn the procedures and become familiar with these procedures so that you can code them. This should not take the place of your CPT manual. Of course, CPT is going to reign supreme, but while we're learning, this is pretty good. All right, so let's look at the procedures and just kind of get ourselves familiar. And if you need to use this or reference it as you're learning, by all means do. Trust me, once you've gotten enough experience, you're not going to need it. It's your training wheels. I don't mind. I hope you don't. All right, so what are the procedures? Donor nephrectomy. This is the cadaver, the removal of the kidney from the deceased person. And this is step one, possibly. Now, I do want to tell you that donor nephrectomies are often not coded on the transplantation record. Usually not. It just isn't because there are two different entities. Just saying, but I'm not saying you're not going to see it. You might see it, but this is step one. Donor nephrectomy, living donor. This is step one as well. Now, if a laparoscopic nephrectomy took place, you're going to use 50547. But as you can see, there is no separate code for a laparoscopic for a cadaver. All right, so let's get to the backbench. A standard backbench. This is the preparation of the graft for the donor, for the cadaver donor. The backbench prep work consists of ureteral tailoring, vessel ligation, those are veins and artery, fat removal, etc. And this is step two in the transplantation process. And you will need to use modifier 51 if you're coding it in addition to the transplantation. Also, backbench work of the living donor is the same. As you can see, the codes are different. Then you've got backbench reconstructive work, such as anastomosis. This is more extensive, and this is step two as well, or step three. Sometimes you don't, you code what was done, and you also use modifier 51 if coded with other procedures. Then you've got a recipient nephrectomy. If they're removing the patient's kidney. This is the code. However, if this nephrectomy is done, there is a transplantation code with a nephrectomy. So you don't code a nephrectomy, this nephrectomy code, with a transplantation code. It's a separate procedure. All right, and speaking of transplantation, we have without the recipient nephrectomy and transplantation with recipient nephrectomy, and these are step three. So hopefully this chart, will be useful. I'm going to use it to solve the scenario because we have to code everything that was done, and this little reference sheet will be helpful. Oh, by the way, make sure you append modifier 50 when coding bilateral procedures. Now, make sure that you only code the procedures performed, and we're going to get started with our scenario. Don't forget how to solve a scenario. The AMCI way, number one, you're going to inventory. What is inventory? You're going to inventory all diagnoses, signs and symptoms, and procedures. Number two, you're going to select your primary procedure in this case because this is CPT. And finally, make sure you follow all guidance. Okay, coders, let's do this. Of the following answers, which best describes the encounter? A. 50360, 5032351 modifier, 5032751 modifier, 5032851 modifier, 5032951 modifier, 50340 59 modifier, and 5030051 modifier. B, 5030, 50327 51 modifier, 50328 51 modifier, 50340 59 modifier, 50300 51 modifier. C, 50365, 5032951 modifier, 50323 51 modifier. D, 50365, 50323 51 modifier, 50327 51 modifier, 50328 51 modifier, and 50329 51 modifier. A 58-year-old male with end-stage renal disease underwent a kidney transplant from a cadaveric donor. The recipient's non-functioning left kidney was removed to accommodate the donor kidney. After receiving the cadaveric kidney on ice, the artery and vein were flushed, trimmed, and ligated to prepare for implantation. The ureter was found to be slightly dilated and required reconstruction. The dilated segment was trimmed, reconstructed with absorbable sutures, and a stent was placed. The donor kidney was successfully implanted under general anesthesia. Okay, coders, your time has already begun, but if you need more, just wait until you're finished, then press play. Yeah, so most of you probably needed more time. I needed more time. There was a lot of things going on and a lot to process. So my inventory took me a little longer just so I can know what was happening. And this is what I have. Well, the patient has end-stage renal disease. We know that the donor was a cadaver, right? Also, and you see it's bolded because this is what you're going to need to code for. The recipient's left kidney was removed. Sometimes I said they keep it in there and sometimes they remove it. So in this case, they removed the recipient's left kidney. Now we're going to look at the backbench work, right? Okay, so the donor, the kidney of the donor, the artery and vein were flushed. It was trimmed and ligated. In other words, it was prepared. And this is a part of standard backbench work. Also, the kidney, it was found that the ureter of that kidney needed reconstructive work or reconstruction work. So they basically reconstructed the ureter and they applied a stent. A stent is a catheter. Okay. So this was the reconstruction backbench work. And finally, the kidney was transplanted. And all of this took place. It's a lot of stuff. But the only thing you need to determine, what is the principal procedure? And if you don't know, because a lot of stuff took place, think about the objective. Why did that patient come? Why is that patient in the OR? What is the goal? Of the six, what is the goal? And if you said kidney transplant, you better believe it. This is the objective of the procedure, and this is the principal procedure. Now let's go ahead and solve. And first, I'm going to solve it using the little chart because that's my training wheels. This is a lot of stuff. I need some help. Now we have our kidney transplantations chart here. We've got our inventory here. And what I need to focus on is what took place. Well, we're not going to code for any diagnoses, right? So we're going to get rid of that end stage renal disease. We're not going to be coding for cadaver donor per se. We're going to reference cadaver donor, but I am going to focus on 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to focus on that nephrectomy, recipient nephrectomy. I'm going to focus on the standard backbench work. I'm going to focus on reconstruction backbench work, and I'm going to focus on the kidney transplant, right? Yeah, let me get rid of this pointer. And 3, 4, 5, and 6 is where I'm going. And I'm going to start with my primary procedure. That's transplantation procedure. And there are only two, one without recipient nephrectomy, one with recipient nephrectomy. And if you said we're going to choose the transplantation with recipient nephrectomy, that is correct, right? You see, the nephrectomy is bundled in that transplantation code. So 50365, that's our code. That's going to be our primary code. And on site, we can get rid of A and B. But let's continue on this list, this chart. What else are we going to do? Well, we're going to get rid of this nephrectomy recipient code 50340 because although this is a nephrectomy code, it's bundled. We don't have to code it additionally, right? So we're going to get rid of that. And you pretty much use that code when that's the only thing you're coding for, if you're coding for a nephrectomy, not in the setting of a transplantation. So that has to go. Also, we're going to code for our standard backbench work, and this is the one for the cadaver. And we're also going to code for the reconstruction backbench work, right? And that's pretty much it. Yeah. So, off bat, we already said that we can get rid of some things. We can get rid of the transplantation without recipient nephrectomy, and that's 50360 because we had a nephrectomy. So let's go ahead and get rid of it. Boom, boom. And also, we know that we're going to code for these three items. D is coding for more than three items, and D is also coding for, what is D? What is different? Well, D is coding for 50323. That's standard backbench. That's good. 50327. Oh, wait a minute. That's reconstructive or extensive backbench work, and 50328 and 29. Well, I don't want to jump the gun or anything. I don't know what this is, so we are going to have to look up the code. Yeah, let's get into it. Now we're ready to look up our codes, and essentially, guidelines and forensic reading will drive this answer. It will drive you right to the correct answer. So we said that 50360 is incorrect, and it's found at both A and B. 50360 is the code for renal allotransplantation. That's a kidney transplant of graft without recipient nephrectomy. We know this is incorrect because a recipient a recipient nephrectomy took place, right? But before we put that red line through, let's look at this, let's look at these answers. And we could see some other things wrong. One that sticks out is this 50340. It's coding for the recipient nephrectomy. Now we know that that's wrong. It's a separate procedure. So A is wrong for two reasons that we can see. And so too is B. Now, let's go ahead and get rid of A and B. It is a distraction. Boom, boom. And one thing that I think will drive this home is our understanding of backbench standard preparation versus backbench reconstruction. So just hold on to that. Now, if we look at C and D, what is the difference between the two? Well, D is coding for 50327, 50328. So that's the difference. Now let's go look at these two. What are they? 50327 is the code for a backbench reconstruction of cadaver or living donor renal allograft prior to transplantation. Venous anastomosis. So this is the vein reconstruction. Was the vein reconstructed? If we go to number 5, because we're coding for the reconstruction, only the ureter was reconstructed, and a stent was placed in that ureter. That's it. The arteries and veins were just flushed. That's a part of the standard backbench. I'm going to let that marinate. All right, so I'm going back. What is 50328? Well, this is the code for backbench reconstruction of arterial anastomosis. Well, there was no artery or vein reconstructed, only the ureter. And you can find that at 50329. So D is incorrect because it's coding for the artery and vein reconstruction. We got to get rid of it. And C is our answer because it's coding properly for the transplantation with the recipient nephrectomy. It's also coding for the reconstruction of the ureter. And finally, it's coding for the standard backbench. Now, let's look at this backbench before we, just drive things home. Backbench standard preparation of a cadaver donor renal allograft prior to transplantation includes dissection and removal of perinephritic fat, diaphragmatic and retroperitoneal attachments, excision of adrenal gland, and preparation of ureters, renal veins, and renal arteries, ligating branches as necessary. So we did have preparation of the artery and the vein. And some I think we had some ligation, we had some trimming and preparation. Your key word is preparation. For the reconstruction, your key word is reconstruction or anastomosis. All right. So C is correct because it's coding properly for the transplantation, for the reconstruction, and for the backbench work. So get rid of my pointer. We're going to get rid of D. C is our answer. And if you said C, coders, way to go, way to go, way to go. And just know this was a complex scenario, very complex. You won't have anything like this. I'm pretty sure you won't. But if you can do this, you can do anything. Keep practicing, and you will, you're going to be amazing. Yeah. All right, coders. Now it's time to move on.